Hey, what's up, guys? It's time for Valentine's Day, a day associated with love, chocolate, cars, and probably cavities. But let's talk about a love story. There was a guy named Nick Chopper. He was a woodsman. He cut down trees in the forest. Now, he would fall in love with a lady named Nimmy Amy. Now, their love wasn't allowed. So this evil person put a spell on Nick's axe, cutting off limb after limb after limb, till there was no more left. Now, there's a guy named Ku Clip who replaced each limb with a prosthetic made of tin. He replaced Nick's whole body, but he forgot one thing: a heart. Now, you're probably thinking this sounds a lot like the story of the Tin Man, and it is. Oh yeah, the Wizard of Oz just got a whole lot darker. Now, the question is, he didn't have a heart, and the story shows in the movie and in the book that he couldn't love because he didn't have a heart. So my question that I pose is, do we need a heart for love? Find out today on the Mental Breakdown.
What you do it like? 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 Y'all can do it like me. What you do it like? Y'all can do it like me. What you do it like?
Now, like I said, it's Valentine's Day, a day associated with love. And you can even ask, do we need love? Now, according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is on the third level. Yes, we do. Love and belongingness, relationships is a part of our human existence. But is the heart needed for that? And this is something we see in the Tin Man's story. But question, what even is a heart? I know that seems pretty redundant, but how does it all work? Do we need it for love, but do we even need it for life? Let's look at that. Wait, and go. So the heart is a muscle, or a pump, if you will. Now, it pumps blood throughout the body. It's part of the circulatory system. Now, the circulatory system consists of the heart, lungs, and blood vessels. The blood vessels are the veins and arteries. Veins bring blood back, and arteries take blood away to the muscles and organs. Now, the goal is to carry oxygen. When the lung diffuses oxygen, it breaks it down so the blood can take it to the muscles and organs to provide it with nutrients. Now, once it's done, the blood is taken back to the heart, and this process can repeat over and over again to keep you alive and time. Hopefully that was enough time to explain all that in less than 60 seconds. Now that's because it takes about 60 seconds for blood to circulate around the body. But let's go off our anatomy lesson for a second. I also said to you guys, can you live without a heart? Now go figure, there actually was a man who did this. His name was Stan Larkin. He was 25 years old and he was waiting for a transplant. So they had something called a total artificial heart system embedded into him. Now, similar to the procedure of open heart surgery when getting a transplant, but it was a little different because these tubes are replaced with a machine so it can pump the blood for you. It's more compact and you can move with it. Old machines were more so bigger and clunkier and you had to be confined to the hospital. So he was able to live for 555 days. That's a little over a year and a half. So it's pretty crazy. So we can see you actually don't technically need a heart to live. And maybe with the Tin Man, the guy Ku Clip, maybe he inserted some kind of similar apparatus because this was like the early 1900s when this story came out. So who knows? But basically, it is possible to live without a heart. But the other question is it needed for love? But why is a heart even associated with love in the first place? So let's go down to some history. Now, the ancient Egyptians were the first people thousands of years ago to associate the heart with being the center of everything. Our souls, our bodies, our minds. This was called a cardiac-centric philosophy. Now, later on, the Greeks would adopt this philosophy as well, but there was an early Greek named Pythagoras. You might remember his theorem, the triangle a squared, b squared, c squared. Yeah, geometry in high school. Who needs it? But anyway, Pythagoras thought the brain was the center of everything, which we now know is true. Although the heart is obviously important in our existence, you need the brain to run the show. But this basically would be accepted though, the heart being the center. And then even later on, the Romans would think something called vena amoris, or translated as the vein of love. Now, they thought that the forefinger, this vein ran through all the way to the heart. And you can see where this is going, right? So the English would later adopt that and put a ring on that finger to signify marriage, love and marriage. Go together like horse and carriage. Shouts out to Beyonce as well. If you like it, you should have put a ring on it, right? So you can see the history of love is crazy, and it came to be that the heart was all a part of this. But now I like to think this question now. We see that all these parts of life and the heart, they play a role. But maybe it's not that the Tin Man didn't have a heart he couldn't love. Maybe it's more so he didn't love, so therefore his heart wasn't what it needed to be. So let's take a look down that rabbit hole for a second. Now, we looked at love from the heart, but what about from the neck up, the psychological aspect, the brain? What role does that play in love? Well, there's actually hormones that our body produces naturally, neurotransmitter, meaning signals that are sent throughout our brain and body that help us love. And one of them is called oxytocin. Now, you may be familiar with oxytocin when you think about mother-child bonding, skin-on-skin contact, but even hugging, kissing someone you care about, or even being with a dog can help produce levels of oxytocin. Now, the great thing about oxytocin is it facilitates different aspects of our being and behaviors that can help us and others. For example, it helps increase protectiveness of others. If you look at the Tin Man, he was very protective of Dorothy. He helped her get through the woods, follow the yellow brick road, and all that good stuff. Also, it increases the likeliness to overcome fear. Now, thinking about taking on the Wicked Witch, that's not an easy task. Had to pour the bucket of water.
Melting! Oh, what a world, what a world!
This is all part of what oxytocin can do for us. And like I said, it comes from loving, showing those emotions, feelings towards another person. See where we're going with this? Also, social cues. People with autism deal with issues with social interaction. Now, there were studies that show that people who were exposed to higher levels of oxytocin had better social interaction. You can think about the Tin Man, the Scarecrow. The heart's more important, the brain's more important. Who knows? But they got along enough to fulfill their journey. Now, sleep. Crazy, right? You ever been lovesick? Couldn't go to sleep because that person was always on your mind? So guess what? Oxytocin also helps with sleeping patterns. And probably the biggest one of all, attraction. We may need physical attraction to get us in the door, but it's that emotional connection that keeps us there. And oxytocin makes a person more physically, sexually, and emotionally attracted to the other. So this is something very important. That's why it's called the love hormone. Now, the other two are dopamine and serotonin. Now, these are neurotransmitters, and like I said, these play a role in how the brain communicates with signals to tell you what you need to keep doing or how to regulate itself. So dopamine is known as the reward or pleasure center. So you think of it like, oh, I did something I like, it feels good. But that's only part of the battle. If you think about dopamine, you can also look at it as a motivating factor, because what happens is all because you like something, that's one part, and it tells you like it, but also it drives behaviors so you can keep doing it. So if you're showing love to others to facilitate that oxytocin release, that dopamine response says, ooh, this feels good. We need to continue doing behaviors that will stimulate that response. And serotonin, this is what we think about when we talk about mood, depression, highs and lows. When this is running efficiently, the show is great. But if it's out of whack, this can be very disruptive, because now the neurons which send signals throughout the brain and the body aren't communicating as effectively. And now you're having lapses in judgment, not being able to feel yourself, and that can help you love. So when these are all running together smoothly, this helps us be that person so we can give love to others. Now, on the other side of emotion, this is crazy. I found this insane. It's something we call broken heart syndrome, or medically known as Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. Don't worry about that name, but broken heart syndrome is the better way to remember it. So with broken heart syndrome, what happens is the heart emulates a heart attack. Now, typically a heart attack happens when there's damage to the heart cells, usually when blockage from the arteries and blood cannot get to the heart, so the heart cells die. Now, the crazy thing is, when you're brokenhearted or saying going to severe depression, maybe from the loss of a loved one, it will emulate that heart attack, and it can be fatal. So there's a crazy story, but also a romantic story, with famous quarterback Doug Flutie. When Doug's dad sadly passed away from a heart attack, within 1 hour his mother passed away too. Now, it's more common for women to suffer from broken heart syndrome, but you can see this love, marriage of over 50 years, this bond was so tight. When she lost the love of her life, Doug's father, her husband, she didn't want to go on either. And that's a beautiful thing, because the love was that strong. So you can see how the emotional and the psychological aspect can affect our heart. So this kind of gives relevance to the whole theory that I think loving is the key for the heart versus the heart being the key for loving. Maybe I have something here. Now, I guess this all says you need to be active in the love process. It's not just something that's just unconditional and just gonna happen to you. You gotta make it happen. So go out there. Love is great for the heart. It's probably the best thing for the heart. Well, that next to exercise, but it can make your love and your heart grow. Look at the Grinch. His heart even grew 3 sizes that day, remember? So there's still a chance for the Tin Man to find love with Mimi Amy. He just has to be active in his search. He has to do what needs to be done so his heart and his brain can sync together and show love. Now, this Valentine's Day, go out there and find your Mimi Amy. But make sure you keep your limbs in the process.
I could stay young and chipper, and I'd lock it with a zipper, if I only had a heart.